Hello, and on behalf of Vmug, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, The Digital Workspace, presented by Rick Westrate, SVP Strategic Alliances and Solutions for Eastern Computer Exchange, and Steve Blake, Senior Cloud Architect for Eastern Computer Exchange. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global Vmug program. Before we begin, I have three quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive an email with that on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All live attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be entered into a raffle to receive a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted by Eastern Computer Exchange following today's presentation. All right, let's get started. Rick, I'll turn it over to you now.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the intro. I hope everyone's doing well today and staying safe. Just a quick mic check. I want to make sure everybody can hear me. Steve, if you could confirm.
Sounds good.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having me today. I'm Rick Westrate again from Eastern Computer. I've been with Eastern Computer for about 11 years now, and also spent some time with VMware. But I've spent probably the last 20 years virtualizing desktops, whether it be, from the very beginning where we took took a Windows virtual machine and just connected to it remotely to, very large global deployments in very large enterprises. So I'm going to spend some time today talking about VMware Horizon, how that fits in and some exciting new options for deploying Horizon, both on AWS and Azure. And then I have along with me Stephen Blake from our professional services team, who is a VDI Horizon Workspace ONE expert and can answer all your questions. So Steve, while I'm going through this, if people type in, the questions and anything really good pops up, we'll try to answer it together. If not, we'll hold them to the end and fit in as many as we can here at the end. And so, you guys are everybody's dealing with the pandemic right now. And, when this first started, I'm sure most of you went through that kind of, oh crap moment. We have to enable everybody to work from home. And the lucky thing for us and VMware is we have some great solutions to enable that and help people with it. The VMware execs have really leaned into making sure that, our joint customers understand that we have a fantastic solution, Workspace ONE in Horizon, to be able to get access to the applications and the critical information that users need to do their jobs from home remotely from any device. And we'll talk at the end too. There's some really great promos that VMware has put together to allow people to test out these technologies and to get started for free or very cheaply. So users care about the apps, and there's a lot of studies that say, the more access you give your users and your customers and your partners access to your information and bring them in to your digital workspace, the more productive they're going to be, the better decisions they're going to make, and they're just going to, enjoy working with you. Your employees are starting to become a younger generational workforce that are used to having multiple devices. They're used to having apps for everything and getting access to the information at the touch of a button from any device that they want. And traditional old ways of working with applications and data, frustrates them. So we got to make it easier. We got to make it more frictionless to deploy these applications to users to onboard them quickly without a bunch of rigmarole. I don't know what your onboarding process is like when you start a new job or one of your employees comes on board, but usually it's probably, pretty manual. And we think about all the different silos of IT that just deal with end users, whether it be the people who deal with the desktops, both Windows and Mac. Often those are different teams. And then you have the people who deal with devices, whether it be the laptops, the tablets, the iPhones, the Androids, even some Windows phones. In each of those silos of IT management, have different tools to do everything. And that's kind of outdated, if I may. And, there's better ways to do it. And with Workspace ONE from VMware, we can bring all those tools together under a single umbrella of a management platform and really serve what we call the modern workspace, the digital workspace, where we can set policies in place to identify the user and say, for example, Joe from marketing, make sure that he has all access to the applications that he needs to get his work done from a desktop, from a laptop, from an Android, from an iPhone. however, whether he's at work or whether he's at home, and make sure it's super secure. And Workspace ONE brings that all together. Today, we're going to be focusing on the desktop and apps portion of that, mainly around Horizon desktops and apps, but Workspace ONE is certainly the modern platform for managing that all. And we won't get more into Workspace ONE, but I like to call it consumer simple and enterprise secure. It gives your users everything that they need to easily get into their apps and desktops, but it's enterprise secure and has all the security controls to satisfy everything that we want as IT administrators. And one of the important things that we always have to take a step back is and ask the question, why are we doing this project? Why are we doing VDI? Why is it the right use case now? I think the pandemic and the COVID-19 is the perfect use case of why we want to be able to allow users to work from home or from a coffee shop or from a sidewalk cafe. But that's really about mobility. But contract employees, I have a couple customers that are insurance companies, and when there is a big problem or an event, they onboard a bunch of contractors and have to give those contractors access in the field to their applications. Branch offices, seasonal business. You think about companies that add a lot of employees during certain seasons in call centers or retail situations, or end of the month even. We can very quickly onboard new users with VDI and not have to worry about just having a bunch of desktops, laptops, or tablets sitting around just for those use cases when those things pop up, whether they be contract or seasonal. And obviously mergers and acquisitions, if you buy a company, you can on day one tell them, hey, just go to this website, log on, and boom, you're going to have access to all the applications of the new company that we just brought in. So if you look at traditional desktops and the way we manage them, I see a lot of customers go and take their old school legacy management constructs and try to port them to the virtual world. When I virtualized a desktop, I really didn't solve anything other than just put it in the data center. So we really have to take a step back and say, how are we going to change the paradigm of how we manage desktops? And I've been doing this a long time, and there have been some dramatic changes in the industry in terms of how we achieve that. But traditional desktops are a pain in the butt in terms of maintaining that image, managing all the applications and who gets what, maybe having to package those, new versions of them coming out. Oh, we have to test that image and the applications, the new version, and now I have to get that all to my users, who, by the way, are probably not plugged into the laptops all the time. So how can I guarantee that everybody's, up to date, has the latest applications, has the latest patches? It's really a lot to take care of. And that's where Horizon and the way we approach desktop management in a virtual desktop world these days is very different from a traditional approach. And we will get into that here shortly. And so with Horizon, we do have a lot of flexibility in user choice where the users, we can give them, a physical desktop. They can have their personal desktop or the one that's issued by the company across the range of iOS and Mac and Windows and Android, but I can also allow them to have virtual thin clients and deploy and give them access to the same apps and the same desktop experience that they would get across all those different devices. And we can even do really cool things with Dell and other manufacturers to have laptops and desktops pre-enrolled in this Workspace ONE ahead of time coming out of the factory. But if we just focus on applications and think about how people are consuming applications today, more and more applications are moving to the SaaS-based model where users are used to going to a website and just being able to click and boom, there's my application. I don't have to worry about it. If I'm connected to a VPN, I don't have to care if I'm in the office. I just get access to my applications everywhere. And that's a really cool concept. And with Horizon and apps and Workspace ONE, we do that. We give the users a really nice, clean portal that's consistent across every access point that they come in from in any device. And it feels and looks the same, where I log in, single sign on, and I get access to this portal where I'm going to get all my applications. And I can just click there, whether it be a full virtual desktop that then has my applications, or the applications themselves individually delivered to me as a published application on our DSH server, which we'll talk about again further. But again, this pulls it all together in one seamless portal for your users. And there's an app catalog there. They can go request additional applications that they may not have access to right off the bat. But it's very much about self-service and from a single platform. And so not all users need a virtual desktop, but hey, maybe they do need that company-based application. Maybe one or two things. And I also forgot to mention we can pull SaaS apps into here, Citrix apps, Synapse, a whole host of stuff, all through one seamless application and desktop, published desktop portfolio and portal here. And so Horizon has come a long way from the early days where really it was just, hey, you have virtual desktops, I'm going to help you connect to those virtual desktops, to a really comprehensive end-to-end end user compute management platform. So from the desktops and the apps all together in a single platform, a lot of focus on just-in-time management technologies. And we're going to talk about how that's changed over the years and how it can really simplify the way you build your desktops and then deploy them and provide a great user experience at the same time. Have smart policies that say if then, if this, then that. Not to steal from the website that does all those cool those cool automated applets for your home automation. But the similar concepts can be applied here. If they're coming in from home on an untrusted computer, for example, we could say maybe we only want to give them access to email and a couple other applications, and not the critical data. But hey, if they're coming in from the office, I can give them critical data. Or if they're coming in from a trusted machine that I know is secure, that I've validated that we manage, that has the latest security patches on it, has the latest antivirus updates, yeah, I'm going to give it access to everything. So we have all these what we call contextual control access policies that we can apply to the environments. And complete environment management for keeping your settings exactly the same regardless of what desktop you land on. Full VMware SDDC integration up and down the stack, especially with the latest and greatest hyper-converged infrastructure that's coming out from people from Dell, HP, and others, as well as flexible delivery models, which we'll also talk about today, running it on-site or in the cloud with a hybrid delivery model. And I'm not going to go through each feature that Horizon has delivered lately, but it is completely robust and able to handle pretty much any workload you throw at it. We used to spend a lot of time in the early days saying, is this the right fit for VDI? You're hard-pressed to find a workload that can't run on Horizon today. And I would challenge you on that because it's rare that we find something that we can't make it work. I have examples of some of the most complex CAD and CAM customers doing stuff remotely in very intense 3D graphics, as well as one of your favorite superhero movie studios. They used to hire contract artists and people to work on their movies and send them half a rack of equipment to their house or to wherever they were located, so they could do their editing and their visual effects and all that kind of stuff. But from a security standpoint, and a management standpoint, it was a nightmare. Now they give them access to remote desktop from anywhere and then linked to NVIDIA grid GPUs on the back end, and they can do all kinds of great, wonderful stuff remotely from anywhere they are. So one of the big things that we can do now that we couldn't do before is we used to have to build all our Horizon virtual desktop infrastructure on site. Now we can leverage the public cloud for that as well, whether it be the VMware Cloud on Amazon, Microsoft Azure, IBM Cloud, or your own cloud for that matter. And we'll talk primarily about VMware Cloud on Amazon and Microsoft Azure today. Steve's going to do his demo in Microsoft Azure. Getting back to that just-in-time management platform technologies, I like to think about, if you think of your desktop, your workspace, it's a very tightly wound piece of jello, layered jello, I would say. It's kind of wobbly. They all stick together. If you try to take a layer, it's probably going to fall apart into pieces. And what I've been preaching a long time to customers, we've had various success with this because the tools were there or not there, is deconstructing the desktop. You have the OS, you have the applications, you have what makes that desktop your fonts, your settings, your kid's picture in the background, all your favorites, and Safari or Chrome or whatever browser you use, all the things that makes it you. Now we have a set of tools between app volumes, instant clones, and user environment management, where I can separate all those pieces of that layer cake apart and assemble them on demand when the user logs in. And so I can give you a minty fresh, guaranteed to be up to date virtual desktop OS with all the latest patches on it every time you log in. And on top of that, I'm going to layer in applications, again, using Joe and marketing. Okay, so Joe in marketing logs in. I do an Active Directory lookup. I say, Joe's in marketing. He needs these 15 apps plus all the common Office apps and these other company apps. And it just layers it in. If a new version of the application comes out, I'm not going to update Joe's desktop. I'm going to update his catalog. I'm just going to update the app volume for that application or collection of app volumes. And that's going to get pushed out to Joe next time he logs in, if not instantaneously. And so rather than having to push and manage and package individual applications out to all these individual desktops, I'm doing it on demand on logon. And so between, the just-in-time virtual desktop using instant close inside of vSphere, where I can guarantee you're getting the fresh and latest desktop, I can do the same for applications now as well with that volume. So it's extremely powerful. We could spend a whole nother hour on each of those technologies. And then I layer on top of that the user environment manager, which is a comprehensive tool around just capturing all your settings, everything that you do on that computer, capturing the settings within reason. And if it's like a call center type environment, we want it more locked down and stateless, we may throw everything away every time they log out. But for a traditional user, we're gonna keep them in all their settings. And again, before we had the challenge where we used to have to just create fat static virtual desktops, and they stayed there, and we'd have to manage them just like regular desktops, physical desktops. And so now we can get away from having to do that. So we can do imaging incredibly fast, instant app delivery, zero downtime updates. We can configure less than half the steps that we used to. It's just so much better and faster. And again, we looked just a few years ago, the work that we had to do to stand up a virtual desktop environment, and it was a lot. And it's been radically simplified by VMware as of lately. And you can see some of the stats here on how long it takes to provision something like 1,000 desktops, or scale up to 10,000 desktops in the cloud. We can do that in a matter of days. In fact, about a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago, when all this COVID stuff started, we've helped multiple customers do this, leveraging the VMware Cloud and Microsoft Azure, and rolling out thousands and thousands of desktops within days on the Microsoft Cloud. VMware for quite a while had various protocols that they support. I won't go into all of them. The Blast Extreme is really where they've settled lately. That's based in HTML5, so it's compatible with most browsers. 6 times the speed, 50% lower bandwidth. The protocols, we used to argue about protocols between Citrix and VMware all the time, and Microsoft RDP. The protocol wars are pretty much dead. They're all full-fledged protocols that support everything you need and will perform well. Blast, VMware just continues to throw tons of money at it and gets better and better day by day. And what's really interesting, if you pair that with VMware's Velo Cloud software-defined WAN, we can do some really interesting things around reporting and bandwidth controls and prioritization across the WAN, coming in from home or from a branch office. Getting a little bit slightly deeper in the weeds, a logical view of how you set up Horizon internally. You have your pod of published desktops, as well as Active Directory and Horizon connectors. The Horizon client basically talks to the Horizon connection server, and it points it to a desktop based upon, what group it belongs in and, what it's entitled to. When it's coming in from the outside world, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, it goes through something called a unified gateway, access gateway, which, puts it all over SSL connection. Very simple. You put that out on the DMZ and helps you with external connections. And here's a little bit more detail about that. We could put load balancers in front of them. They scale horizontally for extreme scale with tons of Horizon clients coming in from the internet, branch offices, or internally. Now, a few versions ago, VMware has released something called Cloud Pod architectures, and Steve will talk about this a little bit more. But when we start deploying virtual desktops at scale, it starts to get a little tricky in terms of where we're going to put people. When they're coming in, we make a lot of decisions based upon groups, where they should be for load balancing, and as well as availability. The load balancers will allow us to do something where if pod goes down, pod 1, we can redirect them to pod 2. We can even direct them to other data centers, all through a single namespace, which is great. So the user can type in mydesktop.yourdomainname.com. They're going to log in, and regardless of what pod they're closest to, we're going to route them to the right location, whether it's up, whether it's down, or there's certain data residency requirements. We can, if they're in Europe, we can make sure they're going to a Europe pod, vice versa, things like that. We're not going to spend much time on it, but I would just say there's end-to-end security here from Carbon Black, a recent acquisition of VMware that's getting, folded in very tightly into the Horizon portfolio and the NSX portfolio. NSX we can use in the desktop space for microsegmentation to trust nobody. If the desktop gets hacked, one of the nice things we can do ahead of time before it ever gets hacked or compromised is say, This is, again, Joe from marketing. He can only talk to the things that he needs to talk to. We've already established rules for that. He doesn't need to be talking to the accounting servers, the accounting applications. So we're going to watch that traffic and say explicitly, I'm not going to let you go anywhere than think places I've told you can go already once you're logged into your desktop. And so there's a lot that we can do from security, and that is an entire conversation on the phone. And in the interest of time, we're keeping rolling here. Horizon comes in a couple different flavors. You can get Horizon Apps, which is just the published apps and it's based on named users or concurrent users, and as well as Horizon Desktops. Horizon Universal gives you both desktops and apps for a few bucks more per month. So very accessible with the choice to run it on-prem in the VMware Cloud on Amazon and the VMware Cloud on Azure, as well as IBM. So quite a few deployment models. That is a subscription, and we can help you price that out. So everybody's used to how we run virtual desktops on site, I hope. If not, let's get a hold of us. We can help with that. But one of the other interesting deployment options is I can now deploy virtual desktops to our major cloud providers. We'll talk about Amazon and Amazon and Microsoft today. And dealing here with VMware Cloud and Amazon, they did a nice partnership with VMware a few years ago, where inside of the Amazon data centers, using Amazon servers, we are layering on top of that vSphere and the whole managed services around maintaining vSphere and everything below that for you. So it's basically infrastructure as a service, VMware dial tone, I like to call it. But VMware with Horizon has taken that a step further with the Horizon control plane, now is abstracted from any one deployment location. It sits in the cloud on its own and allows you to select VMware Cloud on Amazon or Microsoft Azure as a deployment endpoint. And so Steve will show you how this is deployed, but just think of VMware Cloud on Amazon as an extension of your data center. The only difference is you're running in the Amazon data center, and you can choose which ones you want to go into, what availability zone. You can create multiple stretch clusters. You can create, individual SDTCs in different availability zones. I mean, there's a lot of functionality here, and you can scale up very quickly. And again, what's great about this is that you can get going within minutes, and we can help you with that. And you can scale up very quickly at the touch of a button, and it's running the same stack of software that you are used to running within your four walls in your data center. So all the tools and methodologies of management that you've developed all the years, the best practices, hopefully not the bad practices, but the good practices can be brought forward into this new cloud world with the extreme compatibility that is offered by running VMware in the cloud. So a lot of different use cases there for how I would run Horizon desktops up on the VMware Cloud on Amazon, and they kind of fit a lot of the same use cases that we already discussed. If you can dream it, you can probably build it. And it just is really a matter of economics, whether it makes more sense to run it in your four walls or in the cloud. I really like the cloud option lately just because it scales so easily and so quickly. And Steve can tell you some of his recent experiences with that as he just lived through it a couple months ago when we had all these customers frantically calling us, asking us to scale them up thousands of desktops in a weekend because they had to send their workforce home. VMware Cloud on Amazon usually stays from a code basis a couple versions ahead of what you can actually download as a customer to run internally. So you're getting all the latest and greatest vSphere, VMware technology up in the cloud, things like instant clones, app volumes, and user environment manager being supported now in VMware Cloud on Amazon. And again, those instant clones are great for maintaining that perfect image, rolling that out, app volumes for application abstraction, and again, that user environment manager for keeping track of all your sessions, all your settings, sorry. And one thing to note about those instant clones is they are very space efficient. We used to do just full, 10 to 20 gig desktops. That takes up a lot of space when we're doing instant clones like that. It's a huge reduction in space. We talked about the cloud pod design and block design, but basically, and Steve will have to chime in here on the exact limits because it changes every time a new version of Horizon comes out. They almost double. But we can build a pod that is very self-contained, has the desktop pools, the published app pools, has all the connection servers and the unified access gateways, and we start to tie those all together for the cloud pod architecture to make it highly available and highly efficient. So with VMware Cloud and Amazon, just like with Microsoft, which is a little bit different, but you have a lot of different connectivity options there, whether it be a VPN or a direct connect. If you're already an AWS customer, you probably have a direct connect. You can leverage those to get in there pretty quickly. Just transitioning over to the VMware Cloud and Microsoft Azure, a lot of the same concepts, really not much difference there other than you're running on Azure. If you are a big Azure customer already, this may be advantageous to you. We just used it for a customer again with this pandemic, and it worked great. Customer was able to scale thousands of desktops over a weekend and was able to grant them access to the desktops come Monday, and the users were able to get in. Yes, it was a new desktop, but guess what? All their apps are there. They could still work, and whether they could import their settings from their work desktop when they get back or later was a different story. But they got access to other applications. The company's working great and loving the solution. And they're probably going to keep it because they've had such great experience with it. But again, with Azure, we get a global footprint, highly available, hourly billing built on the Microsoft infrastructure. You get the benefits of everything you get with Azure. You can bring your own Azure subscription, or we can create one for you. The control plane lives out there and does all the management, the user environment management, the image management, the analytics, and service updates. And this is just an example of what that would look like up on Azure in terms of the cloud infrastructure, how you build everything out and connect it back to your internal infrastructure for Active Directory, whether it be on premises or in Azure. And one other nice thing I would note, and this applies to all Horizon Workspace ONE deployments, is the ability to start integrating in single sign-on, which is great because the user just signs in once, and if I launch any of those apps from in the Workspace ONE portal, it does single sign-on and does some SAML authentication on the back end. It supports all kinds of identity managers as well, whether it be Ping, Okta, Active Directory, etc. Talk mainly about desktops, but I don't want to forget about the fact that we can use RDS to publish individual applications. So we can use Windows Server in RDS mode and get those applications out in a multi-session fashion to the users. You can import one of the pre-configured RDS image masters from the marketplace in Azure, and so it's all ready to go for you. It makes it very easy to get up and running. And another cool thing is we can use NVIDIA GPUs for that too, if you got something that's a little heavy on the graphics side. And time check, we're doing all right. Steve, why don't we take a few questions here, if there are any, before we get into the demo. And then Steve is going to take you through what it would look like to stand up Horizon Cloud on Azure. He's going to import some Windows 10 and 2019 images just to show you what that process looks like. He's going to show you what the process is to stand up a Windows desktop farm and then publish an application from it, just so you can see what that look and feel experience is like when you're using Horizon Cloud in the control plane on Azure. And so, Steve, if you want to unmute yourself, and maybe I'll take a couple of questions just to check, just to catch up here, and then we'll get into the demo.
Yeah, I believe there's one question that we have, which let me see here, about a method to route the user to the optional gateway, or does this have to be done purely through DNS? And if I understand this question correctly, I believe it was talking about the cloud pod architecture and users being routed from one pod to another. And if I understand that question correctly, basically you can define home pods or home sites, so where that users have their primary pod access and only revert to the other pod if that pod primary pod is unavailable. So I hope that answers that question. Our demo today will be limited on what we can show you. However, if you'd like to see a deeper dive and a more personalized demo, one can be arranged. We can also invite you to test drive Horizon Cloud on Azure or IBM. And if you want to see Horizon Cloud, of course, within your own environment, you can definitely speak with our sales team, and we can arrange a POC for you. The demo today will show you the Horizon Cloud on Azure from a deployment focused perspective. And what that will consist of is that we'll first deploy the Horizon Cloud Pod. The Horizon Cloud Pod contains the service node that is responsible for, managing the Horizon Cloud infrastructure resources, the policy management and access control. The Horizon Cloud service node is used in Horizon Cloud on both Azure and IBM deployments. And then the second part of that deployment is the association with Active Directory. Now, the Horizon Cloud on Azure is what we consider to be the DaaS model. So it's desktop as a service. And so it doesn't support instant clones or link clones like you could on a traditional on-premise or a VMC deployment. We're going to also import in the Microsoft Windows 10 image to be used for our virtual desktops, and then the Microsoft Windows 2019 image to be used for the supported hosted applications. We'll deploy a desktop assignment, which is basically associating a published image with a group of users, and we'll deploy an RDSH farm that will be used to publish session-based applications and entitle those to the users. So go ahead and Rick, go ahead and start the demo.
Sure. And Steve, quick question. If these guys are looking to stand up the Horizon Cloud on Azure in a production, or even let's say POC, what's the average turnaround time to get this stood up? What should they budget from a time perspective?
Well, typically there's some mandatory prerequisites you're going to want to have in place, and that's usually a checklist that we go over with the customer. But in terms of getting the platform up and running and being able to start having desktops to access, you're looking at typically within a day to have that environment completely stood up, because all of the back-end infrastructure, especially with Azure, is all automated, so you don't have to deploy UAGs and connection servers and manually configure them. It's all done through the Horizon Cloud
Nice.
control.
Yeah, it's a big time save. So that's great, Steve. Thank you. All right, I'm going to hit next on this, Steve, and I will let you take it away.
Sure. So we'll begin the deployment with the Horizon Cloud Pod on the Microsoft Azure platform. Certain parts of this demo have been sped up. So under the Getting Started page, we're going to click on Add and add our cloud capacity and select the Microsoft Azure as our target SDDC. Here's where we'll actually enter in our Microsoft subscription details. We'll define our pod name, define the location and region for both the network management, the management and desktop subnet. A CIDR range of at least /27 is required. And then of course, it's also highly recommended that those subnets are dedicated and not in use for other resources. And then we'll define the NTP server, and then we'll configure the Unified Access Gateway, which is actually an optional feature, but highly recommended. The UAGs are front-ended by Microsoft Azure load balancers. All of that's done, like I said, automatically on the back end through the platform. We'll define our FQDN, configure the network, assign our DNS address, and if required, you also have the option to, explicitly define static routes. We do have to upload our certificate for our domain, so it does require SSL certificates. And you also have the option to front end another pair of UAGs for internal access. We see that deployment a lot for maintaining consistency and just more secure access. We'll click on Validate and Proceed and confirm that it's been added. That process will take about 20 to 40 minutes to complete. Next, we're going to add in our Active Directory, and we're going to configure our NetBIOS and our DNS name. And to prevent additional accidental lockouts to your bind account, Microsoft actually has you configured to a primary and auxiliary account. And of course, they recommend, for those accounts to, be not to expire and make sure they don't have the ability to be locked. And then we'll add in our domain join account, and then this domain join account is the actual account used that your machines will join Active Directory with to the environment. So this needs to be an admin account, and also it needs to be part of the super admin administrators group as part of the cloud Horizon Cloud Administration. Now, once you get your domain account defined, you'll actually be redirected and then have to log in to the Active Directory with the Horizon Cloud Control Plane. And then once that's done, you'll see the green check mark next to Active Directory, and you'll see the green check mark next to Microsoft Azure, showing that your pod and your Active Directory has been successfully set up and configured. And then on the second step here, we have two options to import your desktop or RDS-enabled server. VMware recommends that you select the VM type from the Microsoft Azure Marketplace, where you have a variety of fully optimized and types and sizes to choose from. And you can actually modify the types of VMs available to your environment. So you have, you can have, for example, if the VM type will be available for the farm or desktop wizards, you can tag it as a favorite. They have tags field, which is just a custom text field you can use to identify specific VM types. And a good example here in these use cases, for example, in these larger VMs of 208 vCPUs, you may not want to show those. So you may want to remove those larger VMs and limit the inventory available for desktop selection when you're going through the wizards. So we're now ready to import in our Windows 10 VM, and we're going to also import in a Windows Server VM. And what we're going to do is we're going to define our location, select our Horizon pod, which we just configured, and then we're going to select the desired OS, set the local admin user and password, and then you also have options to support GPU use cases and RDP via public IP address. And then what we'll see here is once we click on advanced properties, you'll see a variety of additional features to choose to add to your image during the deployment process. These are features that you would typically see when you traditionally deploy the Horizon agent to that Windows machine. And then when we save this and click on import, we're going to repeat this process for the Windows 2019 Server VM. Now each one of these imports is basically creating a virtual machine, installing the initial OS, and getting the VM to the point where you can then RDP into that VM, install your applications, make any required modifications, and get the VM ready to be used as a sealed image that will be for your desktops and for your application pools. So we'll go ahead and let this finish and click on import here. You also have the option to use the Microsoft license, or you can bring your own license as well. So now we're going to convert one of these desktops as our image. So we're going to select our location. We're going to select the desktop. We're going to configure the company name and all the other type of required information like the local credentials. Now, what this process is doing is essentially sealing this VM to be used as an image for our desktop assignment. And then once that process completes, you'll see a little green dot under the status showing it's ready. And now that image can be used to publish the desktops. Now, it's also important to note that once the desktops are sealed or the image is sealed, and you're now ready to create the desktop assignment, no further changes can be made to that image. So what we're going to do now is under the Getting Started wizard, we're going to click on New in the desktop assignment. And we're going to create our actual desktop pool or our desktop farm for our users. So we're going to click on Add, and then you have 3 different choices for desktops pools. Dedicated, where a user receives the same desktop, floating, a different desktop each time, and session-based. With Windows 10 on Azure, they now support Windows 10 multi-session mode. So we're going to define our, our information, define our target and model, the desktop model. We're going to set the Active Directory domain. We're going to configure our minimum and maximum desktops in the pool, which is maximum how many desktops you want the pool to kind of span up to. And we're going to configure our license. Like I said, you can BYOL or you can support the leased license. We're going to assign our users to this, so users can be assigned via group or they can be assigned as an individual. And then we're going to configure our maintenance policy, right? So we're going to configure how many machines can be QS'd at the same time. We're going to configure any log off parameters and timeout parameters. And then we're going to confirm our settings, and we're going to click on Submit. And then that will actually, you'll see 3 dots as that pool works. And when that desktop pool is ready for publishing, you'll see a green dot under the status. And at that time, those desktops in that pool are now ready for user connections. So now we're going to deploy an RDSH farm that will be used to publish session-based applications and entitle them to users. So under the inventory tab on the left, we're going to click under New under Farms. We're going to select our farm type, which is applications. We're going to define our name, location, and target. We're going to filter for our target model, select the server model, and then we're going to select our sealed image. Finish the description, select our VM name, and then click on applications, select our location, our pod, filter for the model that we want to use. And again, if you had favorites, you get to use the favorites tab and have only the favorites shown here. We're going to configure the maximum servers for this application farm. And again, we're going to select the license model that we're going to be using. And now with this farm, we're going to actually configure power management policy. So we're going to set this to have optimized performance for power, and we're going to set our power management policy date and time for it to be used. So we're going to configure our days, set our time, and then click Next. Confirm that everything looks good, and then we're going to click on Submit and create the actual farm. Now we're going to actually publish the applications that live on that RDSH farm. So you have 2 ways to do this. You can manually select the applications, or you can auto scan. We're going to do auto scan. We're going to define the requirements. Now, what this does is it scans the server and it lists out all the applications that are available for publishing. So we can go through and pick out the applications that we want to publish. Click on Next. If we had special parameters for those applications, we could define them here under the Attributes tab, and we'll click on Submit. Now, once those applications have been published, we have to now assign them to the users. So we're going to go in and actually click on the Assignment tab, Applications, and we're going to assign these applications to a group of users. We're going to give it a name. So we're going to call these basic apps, give it a name. Click on Next. We're going to select the applications that we want to publish as part of that group. and then click Next. We're going to assign it again to an Active Directory group that's been assigned. Click Next, and then we're going to click on Submit. And at this time, you now have both the desktop and the application assignments published to your users, and within a matter of minutes, you have an environment up and running with little effort with your admin group. And when the users log in, Rick, if you go to the next slide. So when the users log in, they'll actually see their desktops and their applications within the Horizon client, whether that's the web interface or if that was the actual, Horizon client that they're running on their desktop. But either way, they'll be able to access the applications that you choose to publish, and they'll be able to access and launch the desktops that you publish. So this is just an example because we didn't have an operational platform to show live, so we had to pre-record. But this is just using strictly Horizon. Now you can also tie this into Workspace ONE, as Rick talked about earlier. And then in Workspace ONE, you could have these applications potentially, where they have their own access network and policies. They could be delivered to a unified catalog and pushed down to their mobile devices, and they wouldn't even need the Horizon client. They would just use the Workspace ONE intelligence app to access the apps. So Rick, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to close it out the remaining slides.
Yeah, sure. I just have this, and we'll get back to questions. So there are a couple promos right now that are expiring soon. I don't know if VMware is going to extend them, but VMware Horizon Cloud and Azure, you can get 45 to 90 day. You can get 90-day trials on that for free, as well as Workspace ONE and Horizon 7. So there's a lot of free trials that are out to 90 days now. For 100 users or so, that allows you to play with this and really try it out, and we can help you with that. We've done that for a couple customers with some POCs and such, and it's been great. Some great ways to get started is an assessment. Just really try to understand what you guys are trying to achieve. Get yourselves into the hands-on labs. We have business case builder tools, which we can help you model the business case to bring forward to your leadership to help try work through the ROI TCO of whether we should do this or not versus traditional desktops. And we have a great professional services team that can help you with POCs, design, and full deployment. So with that, we'll probably wrap up with questions.
Yeah, Rick, we got some good questions in here. One question that came in, how does the UAG work with two-factor authentication as an extra layer of security for offsite users? So that's a two-part question. So with the Microsoft Horizon Cloud on Azure, and IBM, you only have radius authentication as part of the native support. Now, what you could do is you could tie in Workspace ONE Access to that deployment, and it actually comes with your Horizon Universal License now. And Workspace ONE Access gives you the more flexibility for doing SAML authentication and other two-factor authentications that your organization may have. Now, if you're doing a deployment on-prem of Horizon or deployment of Horizon on VMC on AWS, then you have more flexibility to have that authentication done just alone with the UAG and not require the Workspace ONE Access component. But with Azure and IBM, it does require Workspace ONE Access, which is the former IDM product, if you want to do something outside of just radius authentication. Let's see. You currently cannot join Horizon and Azure into your existing CPA, correct? Are there future plans for that? So yes, that VMware is on track to expand feature parity with Horizon on Azure and IBM compared to on-prem and VMC on AWS. What I will say is that the Horizon Cloud control plane does allow you to manage all of your environments from a single console. So via the cloud connector, you could deploy your cloud connector to your Horizon on VMC or your Horizon on-prem, and you can manage all three environments together. But that is correct. The Horizon cloud on Azure could not be tied into your CPA architecture that you may be running on-prem today. They would be separate environments that could be managed together but accessed separately through the DNS namespace. Yeah, and I think that there was a question about handouts for the pull down. I believe that we're going to have a PDF available of the slide deck. And
Yeah, we'll get that out.
Yeah, and this is going to be recorded as well. So.
There's a question there about, is there a way to route to the optimal gateway, or does that to be totally done through DNS?
That was the question I tried to answer before the demo.
Okay.
If I didn't answer that right or didn't hit on what you're looking for, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'll be glad to help out.
Okay. I think that's it for questions. All right. If anybody has anything else, please type it in. We'll get back to you. Otherwise, thank you for your time today and enjoy your day.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to say thank you to the speakers for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder to the audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the Vmug webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to take a moment to complete the online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at Vmug, thank you and have a great rest of your day.